Cooper watched the streetlights come on as Jefferson maneuvered the car through D.C. traffic. He felt out of sorts. He'd spent the entire 2 days in Bethesda anxious to get back home, and now that he was nearly there, he wanted to be back in Bethesda questioning Pulse. Why had he killed Caroline Tusini? Why had he paused after dropping to the other side of the fence when he could have gotten away? What had he been about to say? That wasn't really their job, though. The old-fashioned investigative work Cooper had dreamed of doing when he got recruited to the FBI wasn't really applicable these days. Motive didn't have a lot to do with bloodlust, Jefferson would say, and shake it off, ready for the next case. But he was used to it. He'd been working for the BSI for 5 years, almost as long as the BSI had existed. Cooper had only been there for 6 months and wasn't yet comfortable walking away before an investigation was technically closed. After cases like Bethesda, he felt like a glorified bounty hunter, and that wasn't why he'd wanted to get into law enforcement. All that time in school, training, everything he'd given up at home, the fights with his dad for one reason: to join the FBI. And he'd only gotten to say a few years before moving on to, well, this, and all that this entailed. But it was too late to get out now. He'd been warned. Once he accepted a position with the BSI, he couldn't return to the FBI. It would present a conflict, his supervisors had informed him. How, he didn't understand. They both worked for the same government, both went after bad guys. BSI was technically an offshoot of the FBI. Where did the conflict come in? But he hadn't asked those questions. After Cooper had woken up in the hospital missing 6.5 feet of small intestine with a tube draining his stomach contents out his nose and an invitation to discuss possible promotion opportunities at the mysterious BSI headquarters, the only question he had was what the hell had happened. The BSI told him they could answer that if he agreed to join their team. "Isn't that blackmail?" Cooper had croaked, his throat still sore from the intubation, though thankfully the doctors had removed the nose tube and started him on a nutritional IV. The U.S. government doesn't blackmail. Unfortunately, the answers you want involve extremely sensitive information that is a matter of national security. Ordinarily, you would get the same cover story as your partner did, but you showed promise. So he'd made promises. And when his recovery was complete, he found himself signing away his life in the hushed office of Jacob Furtho, director of the Secretive Bureau of Special Investigations. "Monsters are real," Furtho said, accepting his contract like a pin-pulled grenade and pointing to the chair across his desk. "I'd rather stand, sir, if that's all right," Cooper had replied. It had taken a month before his rearranged gut started accepting solid foods and he was let out of the hospital, and the weight loss still showed. Cooper didn't want his new boss to think he was weak. Besides, he was too on edge to stay still. What kind of idiot agreed to a job before even knowing what it was? I've had the pleasure of putting away a few monsters already. He'd seen people do terrible things during his 3 short years in the FBI. Had grown up with a sheriff for a father who didn't know the difference between home and work, never mind not talking cases at the dinner table. I'm afraid I already know they're real. "No, you don't, but you will," Furtho said. "What do you know about werewolves?" Cooper frowned and shifted his weight awkwardly. "Is that a gang, sir? I'm not familiar." "No. Werewolves. Sometimes a man, sometimes a wolf. Or woman, too, of course."